Well, ladies and gentlemen, the day has come. Canadian Bill C-16 has passed the Senate with 0 amendments or revisions. The misuse of preferred gender pronouns can now be considered a hate crime under the Ontario Human Rights Code, leading to a fine and potential jail time. This isn't about words that you can't say. This is about words that you must say. Private citizens are now mandated by law to use a particular type of language and to refer to someone by their preferred gender pronoun without question. This includes male and female, the gender non-binary and grammatically incorrect usage of they to refer to a single person, as well as an ever-growing list of made-up words such as Z and Zir. A refusal to use someone's chosen gender pronoun is seen as harassment and the incitement of hatred against transgender people, as opposed to a rejection of the absurd, dangerous, and unscientific gender theories that this law is predicated on. Gender expression is also protected under this law, which means criticizing the way someone dresses can also be considered hate speech if it is deemed a violation of their gender identity. With the passing of this bill, we have a true assault on free speech and free expression. The discussion of gender identity politics must now always be framed within the context of a law that could land you in prison for saying the wrong thing, or for disagreeing with the theories surrounding gender identity in politics. Theories which, if not subscribed to, will see you quickly labeled a bigot or a transphobe. These same theorists make wholly unscientific claims, such as there being no biological difference between men and women, and that gender is completely fluid and changeable at all times. As I've said many times before, language is our best and most effective method of navigating within the world and understanding each other. And being able to openly and honestly discuss any topic is at the core, the very core, of a free and open society. How can a subject be discussed honestly? And how can our speech be considered free if the language that we must use is either demanded or restricted by the state? These government sanctions are just one more move in the word games and power games played by the left, predicated on the false notion that it is somehow related to respect or compassion. Affirming someone's claimed identity and using made-up words in the process has nothing to do with respect, and there is no evidence to show that it would actually be beneficial to do so. In what other instance are you allowed to subjectively choose the elements of your identity? And in what other instance would having others unquestionably validate your claims be considered helpful or compassionate? As Dr. Jordan Peterson, an avid critic of Bill C-16, continually states, identity is not based on subjective whim, but rather mutually negotiated understanding based on action and behavior, not demand. Similarly, language is also based on mutual understanding, but these pronouns are being forced on the population with no broad or common approval, and with no actual linguistic basis other than an ideological one. The argument of equality is also common when referencing this bill, but how can forcing people outside of a particular ideology to comply with the demands of those within it be considered equality? Both of these claims are meant to conceal the true authoritarian control behind this and other bills. In defense of C-16, many have claimed that it will only be implemented in the most extreme cases of harassment and discrimination. But there are already multiple examples concerning other similar bills that show this to be yet another false argument. Just recently, in Oregon, a teacher who claims to be neither male nor female was awarded $60,000 because her colleagues referred to her as she and lady instead of her chosen pronoun they. The teacher filed a complaint, but after the district found no evidence of harassment, she sued them and was awarded the settlement. In another lawsuit, Vernon Mussington was taken to court on claims of harassment after calling Joanne Gullen, a transgender woman, geezer. Gullen claimed that Mussington had harassed her multiple times, despite the person Gullen describes as having done the harassment looking nothing like Mussington, and Mussington stating that he had never met Joanne prior to the incident and had no idea that she was transgender. He was initially convicted on the charges, but the ruling was overturned after an appeal. All that just for calling someone geezer. These are only two examples of cases that are continually popping up based on harassment and discrimination due to misgendering, and neither of them can be considered extreme by any stretch of the imagination. One of them even concerns the use of casual language used in passing just based on someone's outward appearance. Cases like this can only be expected to multiply with the passing of this bill. On the heels of C-16, another bill in Ontario, Bill 89, spreads gender ideology into child services. This bill adds gender identity and gender expression to the criteria that child protection, foster, adoption service providers, and judges must take into account when determining what is best for the child, meaning that those who do not subscribe to the gender ideology can be seen as unfit to foster or adopt a child. Even more outrageous is that biological parents who do not validate their child's gender identity can have their children viewed as in need of protection, as the refusal to validate their identity is seen as tantamount to abuse, setting them up for potential intervention by the state. So, injecting puberty-blocking hormones into your child, or putting them through intensive surgery, causing irreversible changes to their body, is not abuse, but misgendering them is. Bill 89 attempts to persuade parents to allow their children to transition at younger and younger ages, and makes them think that they are abusive if they don't. It also pressures them into accepting the gender-affirmative ideology, despite any opinions to the contrary, even if those opinions come from seasoned experts. Kenneth Zucker led the Toronto Gender Identity Clinic for decades and was a leading psychologist and researcher in the field of gender dysphoria in children and how it should best be treated. Zucker focused on helping kids feel comfortable in their own bodies, and he found that, with time, 3/4 of children eventually settled into their biological identity as their gender dysphoria desisted, or the child realized that they were actually homosexual. Political and social pressures mounted against Zucker and the clinic, as people claimed that he was practicing what equates to conversion therapy on his patients. In 2014, the clinic was dismantled, Zucker was fired, and his reputation was defamed after false accusations were posted online in an external review of the clinic, claiming that Zucker had told a child to remove his shirt and laughed at them, an incident which never occurred, despite no evidence that there was ever mistreatment of patients at the clinic, as well as insistence by parents that the clinic had greatly helped their children. Zucker's work and reputation have been swept away in the wake of this new political agenda. These bills are being put into place prematurely, without any long-term evidence or even conjecture about the consequences of their implementation. There is little evidence to support the claim that gender-affirmative treatment is the best way to handle the issue. Furthermore, bills like this discourage honest research into what actually causes gender dysphoria and how it can best be handled on a case-by-case basis. This is an example of social politics and ideology infecting science and legislation. The narrative seems to be that your gender identity is this deep, transcendental, unchanging part of you, almost like part of your soul, despite the claim that it's also malleable and can shift from moment to moment. Again, it seems to me that the left is creating this pseudo-religious structure based on inconsistent logic that ignores science whenever it's convenient. The same people who declare right-wingers to be anti-science when it comes to issues like climate change also deny basic biological science when it doesn't fit within their idealistic framework. Following common leftist practice, a very large, complex, and nuanced topic is compressed and simplified down into a one-word answer that is only backed by their own forceful ideas. The demand to cease treatment of gender dysphoria as a psychological issue is growing, despite all other behavior and sensation having a psychological or neurological origin. What's going on in your brain is at the center of it all. So why would gender dysphoria be any different? Understanding the origin is almost certainly more constructive than performing a surgery that makes someone resemble a member of the opposite sex. Can it be comparable to body integrity identity disorder? And if so, is performing surgery to remove someone's arm or leg the absolute best method of helping that person? These are the types of questions that must be asked, and it is quickly becoming unacceptable and even illegal to even suggest such things. The undeniable truth is that there is a problem within the transgender community, though there is disagreement about the cause of that problem. The Williams Institute at UCLA found that the suicide rate for transgender people was 41%, 9 times the national average. A study in Sweden, one of the only long-term studies on gender dysphoria and sex reassignment surgery, found that men and women who had undergone the transformative surgery were 19 times more likely to commit suicide than the average population. One side attempts to explain these numbers by blaming it on discrimination, bullying, and society being unaccepting of transgender people. One study done in Canada does seem to support this, as suicide rates in transgender people dropped over 50% when a supportive environment was present. The other side says that the problem is a much deeper, psychological issue, as the suicide rates are comparable to those linked to mental illness such as depression, and even a 50% drop still leaves a rate much higher than the general population. What a grown adult chooses to do with their body is their business and theirs alone. But once you start pushing that agenda onto other people and pulling your ideas into the political realm, it becomes everyone's business, and those ideas are fair game for criticism. This especially applies when we are talking about transitioning children and the state inserting itself into family life with claims that it knows best. It is totalitarian and downright dangerous. What does a 14-year-old, or hell, a fucking 4-year-old girl, know about what it means to be a man? Absolutely nothing. They can barely process complex emotions, and their brains are far from fully developed. Injecting puberty-blocking hormones into someone this age, or putting them through body modification surgery, is terrifying and abusive, but it is becoming a more and more common practice. In a matter of 5 years, the main gender clinic in the UK has seen a 1,000% increase in referrals, and the Johns Hopkins Clinic has reinstated sex assignment surgeries after social and political pressures to do so. What will be the future result of this drastic shift in how we view and treat gender dysphoria? Only time will tell. To get slightly metaphysical for a second and to produce a little bit of a counterpoint, I am an avid listener of Terence McKenna. He often spoke of boundary dissolution, the dissolving of all boundaries between all things, be it mental, physical, or otherwise. He saw culture and social construction as the enemy, something that prevented people from claiming themselves as unique individuals and creating their own reality based on direct experience. Part of me does view this departure from gender norms as an improvement, a breaking free from societal constraints. But the answer is not a different social construction. The answer is not a different ideology. We will only get caught in the same traps that have ensnared us in the past. As with anything else, a measured approach is necessary, without swinging the pendulum too far in the opposite direction. An assault on people's ability to think and speak freely about a topic, and silencing dissenting opinions as citizens are forced to use the poorly crafted language of radical left-wingers, is a horrible way of creating a tolerant and mutually agreed-upon environment. The risk of alienating one another increases, and the divide grows wider. As I've said before, the power of the spoken word cannot be overstated, and we must continue to speak openly, even in the face of this political pressure. We must also continue to question the methods and motivations of those who push an absolutist and overreaching agenda and claim to know what is best for us and our children.